Have you ever been told you didn't belong even when you earned every right to be there? Imagine buying a first-class ticket, walking toward your seat with confidence, only to be stopped, not because of your mistake, but because of your skin. That was the moment Dr. Maya Ellison, one of the most powerful black CEOs in America, faced the quiet violence of prejudice at 30,000 feet. A woman who built systems to protect others suddenly found herself at the mercy of one designed to erase her dignity. What would you do if everything you stood for was tested in a single humiliating moment? Would you stay silent to keep the peace, or use that silence to make the world listen? This isn't just a story about one woman and one flight. It's about every person who has ever been told to shrink, to wait their turn, to prove their worth again and again. Because sometimes, justice doesn't arrive in handcuffs. It comes through courage, truth, and a phone that froze 12 planes in 3 minutes. If you believe every voice deserves to be heard, like, share, and subscribe. Let's begin Maya's story together. The world went quiet. For 3 long minutes, 12 planes cut through the morning sky above America, mute, drifting, waiting. Inside control towers from Dallas to Denver, red lights flashed across screens. Pilots spoke into dead microphones. Passengers stared out windows, confused, clutching coffee cups as the seatbelt signs flickered. News anchors would later call it the sky silence. But in that moment, no one knew that the silence began not in the air, but in the heart of a single woman on the ground. Dr. Maya Ellison stood in her Dallas apartment, watching the blue-gray sky through half-closed blinds. The city was waking up, horns, dogs, a plane, cutting across the horizon. She didn't smile. She hadn't, really, for days. Her phone vibrated, notifications exploding like small alarms. 12 planes grounded. Aerovista Airlines experiencing nationwide outage. Cyber incident suspected. Maya exhaled slowly. She placed the phone face down on the counter beside a cooling mug of coffee. 3 minutes, she whispered to herself, voice calm, almost detached. That's all it took for them to listen. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. In her reflection on the glass window, her eyes looked steady, not proud, not vengeful, just tired. "72 hours earlier, Dallas-Fort Worth International buzzed with Monday urgency. The scent of cinnamon pretzels mixed with jet fuel and the metallic chill of recycled air. Maya rolled her small suitcase toward Gate B-17, a first-class boarding pass tucked neatly into her jacket pocket. She had flown thousands of miles in her career board meetings, security conferences, United Nations tech summits, but this morning, something felt heavier than her luggage. At 40, she was the founder and CEO of Centranet Security, one of the fastest-growing cybersecurity firms in the country. Her company protected hospitals, banks, even government agencies. Yet no firewall could protect her from what was coming. "Morning," she said softly, handing her ticket to the gate agent. The woman behind the counter, Heather Klein, glanced at Maya, then at the ticket. Her expression shifted, polite smile fading into suspicion. Heather murmured, scanning again. "This says first class. Seat 2A. "Yes," Maya replied. "That's correct." Heather hesitated. "Are you sure this isn't a company upgrade? Or—" Maya blinked. "It's a paid ticket, purchased through Centranet corporate account." Heather looked up again, eyes narrowing just slightly. "Right. Of course. Just one moment, ma'am." Behind her, the supervisor, Rick Sanders, approached. He leaned closer, lowering his voice but not enough. Is there an issue? Heather handed him the ticket. It's showing valid, but I want to confirm the fare type. Maya stood there, every muscle still. Passengers in line shifted impatiently. A man behind her sighed loudly. Rick typed something into the terminal. His brows lifted. Looks like we may have an internal flag. Could be a mismatch between billing and passenger name. That's impossible, Maya said calmly. It's my company. I'm the primary cardholder. Rick forced a smile. Well, we just have to be careful these days. Fraud. You know. Please step aside. Ma'am. That word ma'am landed sharp. A polite dismissal, dressed in formality. Maya stepped back, gripping the handle of her suitcase. Her heartbeat was steady, but a cold wave rose in her chest. She looked at the boarding pass again, her name, printed perfectly. Dr. Maya Ellison. Behind her, two white businessmen joked about another delay. One chuckled. Bet she's trying to sneak into first. She heard it. She didn't react. 5 minutes later, Rick returned. We're reassigning you to economy, row 34B. It's just a precaution while we verify the payment source. Economy, Maya repeated quietly. For a verified first-class ticket, Rick's smile stiffened. You'll still reach Seattle. Ma'am, that's what matters. Right for a second. Silence expanded a heavy invisible wall between dignity and humiliation. Then Maya nodded once. Right, she said softly. That's what matters. She walked away. Suitcase wheels clicking on the tile, the sound felt like punctuation. Each step marking a sentence she hadn't chosen to write. Hours later, high above the clouds, Maya sat in row 34B, middle seat. A toddler kicked the back of her chair. The flight attendant passed her twice without asking for her drink order. She glanced toward the curtain dividing economy from first class. Through the gap, she saw champagne glasses and silver utensils glint under warm light. Her phone buzzed again, a text from her friend. Leah Brooks' safe flight. Don't forget to breathe, Maya typed back, trying. Then she locked the screen and stared at her reflection in the dark glass of the window. Outside, clouds rolled like waves over the horizon. Inside, her mind whispered an old memory. Her late husband's voice. Dignity, Maya, is the quietest form of power. Let them underestimate you. It buys you time. She closed her eyes. The hum of the engines filled her ears. In that stillness, something hardened quietly inside her. She didn't know it yet, but those quiet minutes that restraint would soon echo across 12 planes, 3 airports, and an entire nation. The terminal was alive with noise-rolling suitcases, the hiss of coffee machines, voices layered on top of one another like static. Dr. Maya Ellison stood near the wide glass wall, pretending to check her phone while her mind replayed the gate agent's tone. The humiliation still clung to her, invisible but heavy. She had taken flights around the world: Zurich, Tokyo, Nairobi, and not once had anyone questioned her right to be there. Yet in her own country, her first-class ticket had been treated like a forged document. She wanted to brush it off, to tell herself it was just protocol, just a misunderstanding. But something deeper whispered that it wasn't. It was the stare, the hesitation, the way Rick had said ma'am as though it meant know your place. The quiet insult was worse than if they had shouted. It was the kind that sank into you. The boarding process began. The loudspeaker called, Group 1, first-class passengers now boarding. Maya should have been in that group, but she waited until nearly last, holding a new boarding pass printed in bold black ink, row 34B. Each step toward the gate felt longer than the one before. Heather, the gate agent, barely looked up when Maya scanned her new ticket. The machine beeped, green light flashing. Heather forced a tight smile. "Have a pleasant flight?" Maya nodded. The words caught in her throat. Pleasant? There was nothing pleasant about being told you didn't belong. The walk through the jet bridge was narrow and cold. Air conditioning blasted down like punishment. As she entered the plane, a man in a gray suit just ahead of her smiled at the flight attendant and was greeted with, "Welcome back, Mr. Langley." When Maya stepped forward, the same attendant barely made eye contact. She moved down the aisle, feeling every curious glance as she passed the first-class cabin. Polished shoes, pressed shirts, laughter over morning mimosas. Her seat, 34B, waited in the middle of the economy section, tight and cramped. The overhead bins near her were already full. She slid her bag under the seat, knees brushing the seat in front of her. The man by the window glanced up, nodded once, and put on his headphones. As the plane filled, a toddler behind her began to sing softly to a tablet screen, a melody looping endlessly. Maya closed her eyes, counted breaths, 1 to 10. She thought of her son back home with Leah for the week. He would already be at school by now, probably showing off his science project, a homemade robot built from leftover parts from Centranet. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be closing the cabin doors in 5 minutes." The captain's voice carried calm professionalism, but Maya could feel the small vibrations beneath the words, the hum of power, the low frequency of something waiting to lift. She reached into her purse and touched her phone, fingers brushing against a silver pendant inside her husband's wedding ring, strung on a chain. A memory surfaced. Of the night before his final deployment, sitting together on the back porch, the Texas air heavy with the scent of rain. He had said, "You'll change more from silence than I ever could with orders." She hadn't understood it then. Now she did. The plane took off. Buildings shrank into squares of light. Maya turned her head toward the window, watched clouds swallow the horizon. Flight attendants moved down the aisle, silver carts clinking. When one stopped by her row, Maya smiled politely. "Can I have some water, please?" The attendant glanced at her, looked toward the front of the cabin, and said, "I'll come back." She never did. It wasn't rage that filled Maya. It was something quieter, something colder, disbelief. She opened her laptop, typing notes for her upcoming meeting in Seattle lines of code, project summaries, and bullet points on digital ethics. But the screen blurred, her focus slipping. Across the aisle, 2 passengers discussed a recent news article a company accused of racial bias in promotions. People see discrimination in everything now. One said, "Maybe they're just not qualified." Maya's fingers froze over the keyboard. The irony wasn't lost on her. After a while, she closed the laptop. She opened the Notepad app on her phone and typed one sentence. They never see it until it costs them something. She didn't know what made her write that. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe intuition. The flight reached cruising altitude. The seatbelt light dimmed. The curtain separating first class swayed gently each time someone passed through it. Maya imagined what it felt like behind it room to stretch. Quiet conversations. The soft clink of real glassware. She wasn't envious. She was simply aware of the gap, how invisible walls could exist in midair. Hours passed. She dozed briefly, dreaming of water, a storm over the Gulf, lightning threading through clouds. She dreamed she was walking along a runway that stretched into the sea. Planes above her frozen midair, motionless. When she woke, her hands were cold. The announcement crackled. "We'll be landing in Seattle shortly." As the plane descended, she caught her reflection again in the small screen in front of her. She looked composed, maybe even serene, but she could feel the fracture underneath. She whispered a short prayer not for revenge, but for clarity. When the wheels touched down, a ripple of applause moved through the cabin. Maya stayed seated, letting others rush to grab their bags. Heather's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "Have a pleasant flight." At baggage claim, her suitcase came out last. She lifted it carefully, shoulders tight. Outside the terminal, rain drizzled across the glass canopy. Taxis lined up in neat rows, engines humming. She stood for a moment in the damp air, letting it cool her face. Her phone buzzed again. Leah calling. Maya answered. "Hey, you landed okay?" "Yeah." Leah's voice softened. "You sound off." Maya hesitated. "Something happened at the gate. They downgraded my seat." "What?" "Why, they said it was a payment issue. And was it?" "No?" Silence stretched across the line. Then Leah said quietly, "You're not the first, but you could be the one who makes it stop." Maya gave a small laugh. More air than sound. "I'm tired of fighting every battle." "You don't have to fight all of them," Leah said. "Just the one that matters most." Maya looked up. Through the rain, the faint outline of a plane lifted into the clouds. She thought about how small it looked, how fragile everything seemed once it was in motion. She whispered, "Maybe this one does." Later, as her taxi pulled onto the highway, the city lights stretched like a digital network beneath the clouds. Each light flickered a pulse, a node, a connection. She couldn't have known that in just a few days. Those same lights in airports across the country would dim all at once. But that thought lingered, buried deep. Sometimes silence wasn't surrender. Sometimes it was strategy. The hum of the aircraft was steady, hypnotic. It filled the air like an unspoken truth, the kind that seeps into your bones when you've been silent too long. "Doctor." Maya Ellison sat perfectly still, her spine straight, her palms resting on her thighs as if trying to ground herself against the weight of everything unspoken. Row 34. Seat B, the middle seat. The kind no one wants, the kind that leaves no room to breathe. To her left, an older man leaned into his aisle space, typing furiously on his laptop. His elbow brushed against her every few seconds, unbothered. To her right, a woman scrolled through her phone, perfume sharp and sweet, glancing at Maya once with a fleeting expression that said, "You don't look like you belong here." Maya turned toward the window. Though she couldn't see much, the wings stretched endlessly into clouds tinted silver by sunlight. She used to love flying the illusion of freedom, the pause between destinations. Now it felt like confinement. A flight attendant appeared, her smile thin but practiced. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked the man by the window. "Whiskey," he said. "Double." The attendant nodded, then turned to Maya, her tone shifting. "Water." "Yes, please." Without another word, the attendant placed a small plastic cup on Maya's tray, not even half full. She moved on quickly, her voice bright again when she spoke to the man in the next row. Maya looked at the cup, at the small reflection of herself rippling in the water. It wasn't about the drink. It was about recognition, the simple acknowledgement of equal worth. She lifted the cup anyway, the water trembling slightly in her hand as the plane hit a soft pocket of turbulence. She remembered her mother telling her, when she was a little girl sitting at the kitchen table in Baton Rouge, "When people look down on you, baby, stand taller inside." That advice had built her. It had carried her through late nights at MIT, through boardrooms filled with skeptical faces, through years of subtle dismissals disguised as politeness. But today, she didn't feel taller. She just felt tired. Across the aisle, a young black man sat in an exit row, wearing headphones. He caught Maya's gaze for a brief second and nodded small, almost imperceptible, but filled with silent understanding, a moment of recognition between strangers. She nodded back, a quiet exchange of solidarity that needed no words. 2 hours into the flight, the seatbelt light came on. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're expecting some turbulence. Please remain seated," the captain's voice said. The cabin trembled slightly, and the murmur of conversation softened to whispers. Maya placed her laptop on her knees, opening a presentation draft. It was for her upcoming pitch to the Northwest Tech Consortium, a multi-billion-dollar contract that could expand Centranet globally. Her slide read cyber resilience through human ethics. She had always believed technology should protect people, not exploit them. Now that belief felt ironic. Even the systems she'd built to protect could not guard her from human prejudice. She started revising her notes, changing phrasing, adding examples, but her mind kept returning to the gate the way Heather had looked at her ticket, at her skin, at her. The word fraud echoed in her memory like a slur. The turbulence worsened. A baby cried somewhere near the back. The man beside her swore softly, clutching the armrest. Maya breathed deeply, steady, mechanical. It wasn't fear of flying. It was the realization that even here, 30,000 feet above the earth, bias had followed her. The turbulence eased, and soft applause spread through the cabin. Maya almost smiled. Humans had this strange instinct to clap for safety, even when danger had only been imagined. Hours stretched. The flight attendant returned with snacks, offering cookies to the white passengers ahead of Maya. When she reached Maya's row, she hesitated. "We're out of the chocolate chip," she said flatly. "Only peanuts left." "Peanuts are fine," Maya replied. The attendant gave a nod that wasn't quite gratitude and moved on. Maya turned the packet over in her hands. The logo, bright blue and gold, seemed to mock her. Something inside her stirred not anger. Exactly. Something cleaner. Something sharper. She pulled out her phone, opened a blank note, and began to type not about the peanuts, not about Heather or Rick, but about patterns. How small indignities collected like data points until they became undeniable. Her thumbs moved quickly. Bias isn't always loud. Sometimes it wears a uniform and a smile. She stopped typing. Her fingers trembled slightly. The man beside her leaned over, curious. "You a writer or something?" She looked up. "A technologist?" He nodded, not really understanding. "Ah. Computers." "Yes," Maya said softly. "Computers. And people." The plane began its descent. Through the window, Seattle appeared below a mosaic of gray clouds, green hills, and shining glass towers. The city looked calm, organized, predictable. But Maya knew that underneath every system, there was chaos waiting to be revealed. When the wheels touched the runway, passengers clapped again. The flight attendant smiled, cheerful once more. Maya remained still. Her hands were folded in her lap, but her mind was elsewhere on the meeting she would attend tomorrow, on the faces that would question her authority, on the quiet vow taking shape in her chest. As passengers began to stand, the young man in the exit row glanced at her again. He mouthed, "Hang in there." She gave a faint nod. He would never know how much that meant. Disembarking took time. People shoved overhead bins closed, muttered about connecting flights. complained about delays. When Maya finally stepped into the jet bridge, the air smelled of rain and metal. A young ground crew member greeted passengers. When he saw her, he hesitated, then said, "Welcome to Seattle. Dr. Ellison." Maya stopped. "You know me." He smiled shyly. "My brother works in cybersecurity. Centronet's kind of a big deal." For the first time that day, she smiled fully. "Tell him to keep building. The world needs more of us." Outside the terminal, the drizzle had turned into a steady rain. Her driver held a sign with her name on it. She climbed into the back seat, watching raindrops race down the window as the car merged onto the highway. The city skyline loomed ahead, soft light reflecting off wet pavement. She thought about the quiet power she had chosen that morning, the restraint, the composure. It had kept her safe, but it had also cost her something invisible. A voice on the radio caught her attention, a talk show host discussing workplace discrimination in tech. A caller said, "Some people just see what they want to see." Maya turned the volume up. The host replied, "Maybe that's the problem. We've stopped seeing each other altogether." Maya stared out at the rain. Her reflection layered over the city lights. She whispered, "Not for long." By the time the car reached her hotel, her decision was almost formed. She didn't know what shape it would take, yet a report, a public statement, something else entirely. But she knew this silence was no longer enough. In her room, she unpacked her laptop, connected to the hotel Wi-Fi, and opened a secure file labeled Centronet, Firewall Prototype. The code lines appeared, green against black. She placed her fingers on the keyboard and hesitated. For now, she just stared. Her husband's words echoed in the quiet. "Let them underestimate you. It buys you time." Time, she thought, was running out. The morning after her flight, Seattle woke under a curtain of fog. From her hotel window, Dr. Maya Ellison could see the outlines of the city towers blurred by mist, lights flickering in slow rhythm. She sipped lukewarm coffee and tried to focus on her presentation slides. Her company, Centronet Security, had been shortlisted for a government defense contract worth hundreds of millions. This meeting was supposed to be a milestone, the proof that a black woman could build one of the most trusted cybersecurity networks in the country. But all she could think about was the look in Heather's eyes when she'd handed her that new boarding pass. Suspicion disguised as politeness. It had followed her through the entire flight like a shadow. Her phone buzzed with a message from Leah Brooks. "You've got this. Remember who you are." Maya smiled faintly, then slid the phone into her bag. She smoothed her navy blazer, checked her reflection, calm, composed, ready. She whispered to herself, "Today is about vision, not validation." The conference room on the 22nd floor of the Innovation Hub was sleek, sterile, and bright. Walls of glass reflected the gray skyline. Around the oval table sat 8 investors and government advisors, mostly men in tailored suits. The only other woman was an analyst taking notes at the far end. Maya greeted each person with measured warmth, shaking hands, making eye contact, reading the unspoken judgments that hovered behind every smile. "Dr. Ellison, we're glad you could make it," said Thomas Heller, the board's senior consultant, his voice carrying the kind of politeness that always felt practiced. "We've been reviewing Centronet's proposal. Impressive structure. But we'd love to understand more about the leadership behind it." Maya knew what that meant. She had heard variations of that line 100 times before. Leadership behind it. As if her name on every patent wasn't proof enough. She nodded. "Of course," she said, voice steady. Centronet was built on one simple principle. Every system is only as ethical as the people who design it. We combine human-centered design with advanced encryption to create security that protects privacy, not power. The screen behind her displayed her slides' clean visuals, blue lines connecting data nodes, the digital heartbeat of the system she had built from scratch. She walked them through each feature, her tone calm, controlled, professional. For 40 minutes, she answered questions with precision, adjusting to interruptions, explaining technology in plain English. Then, near the end of her pitch, one of the younger advisors leaned forward. "This is impressive work, Dr. Ellison," he said, "but we'd like to know who handles the core architecture. I assume you oversee operations." She met his gaze. "I wrote the core architecture myself." He blinked. "You personally coded it?" "Yes." An awkward pause filled the room. One of the investors chuckled softly, then coughed as if to hide it. Another scribbled something on his notepad. Thomas Heller smiled, patronizing. "That's very hands-on of you. Not common for someone at your level." Maya's heart thudded once, hard. She took a slow breath. "I stay close to the code because I built the foundation. It's not about hierarchy. It's about responsibility." "Of course," Heller said, raising a hand. "No doubt you've got a great team supporting you." "An extraordinary one," she replied evenly. The analyst at the end of the table glanced up from her notes, her expression sympathetic. She was young, maybe late 20s, Latina, and for a brief second, Maya caught her eye. A flicker of understanding passed between them. The meeting dragged on, polite but cold. Questions turned sharper. Concerns about scalability, funding, partnerships. Maya handled them all, but she could feel the undercurrent. Doubt. They wanted reassurance that her success wasn't accidental, that she wasn't just a face for diversity on their reports. When the session ended, Heller stood. "Thank you, Dr. Ellison. We'll review internally and follow up soon." Maya shook his hand. His grip was firm, impersonal. "I look forward to your feedback," she said, though the words tasted hollow. Outside, she walked into the hallway, the air colder than before. Through the glass wall, the city seemed distant, unreachable. Her reflection stared back at her, immaculate in her pressed suit, but she felt invisible. She found a quiet corner near a vending machine and sank into one of the leather chairs. The hum of the building filled the silence. Her pulse throbbed in her throat. She replayed the conversation, the subtle dismissals, the patronizing smiles. She had been calm, professional, everything the world said a respectable woman of color should be. And still, it wasn't enough. Her phone buzzed again. "Leah, how did it go?" Maya hesitated before replying. They smiled. They nodded. They didn't see me. Leah called immediately. "Talk to me," she said, her voice low, steady, the way it always was when she sensed Maya's breaking point. Maya stared at the rain streaking down the glass. "It's the same pattern. Leah, they want innovation, but only from the people they expect it from. I gave them everything: data, solutions, vision, and they still looked at me like a question mark." Leah was silent for a beat. "You know what I'm going to say." "I know," Maya murmured. "You can't keep shrinking yourself to fit inside their comfort zones. You built Centranet to challenge the system, not to make it feel safe." "I'm tired," Maya admitted. "Every room feels like a test I didn't sign up for." "Then stop taking their test," Leah said simply. "Write your own." Maya smiled faintly, despite the ache behind it. "That sounds like something you'd put on a protest banner." "It's something I'd paint across the sky if I could," Leah said softly. "But you You actually have the tools to do it." The line went quiet. Maya could hear faint city sounds through Leia's end. The rumble of cars, distant laughter, life going on. She envied the simplicity of it. "You still believe people can change?" Maya asked. "I believe systems can," Leah replied, "because people build them, and people like you can rebuild them." After they hung up, Maya sat in silence. The fog outside had thickened, swallowing the skyline. Her reflection had disappeared. All she saw was the blurred light of her phone screen. She opened her notes app and began to type, the words flowing before she could think them through. They will never question what they can't control, so give them something they can't predict. She didn't know what that meant yet, but it felt right. A knock on the door startled her. It was Evan Porter, Centranet CTO, carrying a folder. "They called," he said. "They're postponing the decision. Said they need to reevaluate proposals." Maya nodded slowly. "Of course they are." Evan frowned. "You okay?" "Yes," she said, though her voice betrayed exhaustion. "Just tired of waiting for the world to catch up." He hesitated. "You've got that look. The one that means you're planning something." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I am." When Evan left, Maya stood by the window again. The fog was lifting. The first rays of sunlight broke through, touching the glass like a promise. She whispered to herself, "They want to test my resilience. Let's see how resilient their systems are." In that moment, something shifted inside her. Not rage, but clarity. She had spent years building networks to protect people from attacks. Now, she was about to teach a system what accountability looked like. The city below moved on, unaware that a quiet storm was forming in one woman's heart. Night fell over Seattle like a slow curtain. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick with reflections of streetlights and neon. Dr. Maya Ellison sat at the small desk in her hotel room, her laptop open but untouched. The glow of the screen highlighted the weariness in her face. She had spent the last 2 hours staring at Centranet's internal dashboard, scrolling through security reports that no longer held her attention. Every number looked perfect, every system stable. Yet inside her, nothing felt steady. Her mind wandered back to the meeting. Every condescending smile, every doubtful glance they replayed in her head like a bad recording. She had answered every question with clarity, logic, and precision, yet they had still looked at her as though she was a visitor in their world. And the part that stung most was how calmly she had taken it. The composure she was so proud of had become its own kind of cage. Her phone vibrated against the desk, breaking her thoughts. "It was Leah," Maya answered. "Hey," she said quietly. Leah's voice carried warmth even through the static. "You sound like someone who's been holding her breath for too long." Maya let out a dry laugh. "Maybe I have." "I read the news about your meeting," Leah said. "They postponed the decision." "Of course they did. Because they want time to make it look fair. You know how it works." Leah sighed. "You've spent years proving yourself to people who don't want to see you. Maybe it's time to stop playing by their rules." "I've built my whole life around rules," Maya said. "Around showing that excellence speaks for itself." "And what has it said?" Maya looked toward the window. The Space Needle glimmered faintly in the distance, blurred by fog. It said, "I can survive their doubt, but survival isn't the same as progress." Leah's tone softened. "You don't need to survive anymore. You need to shift the system. You can do that." "Maya, you're one of the few who actually can." Maya said nothing. Her silence was heavy, thoughtful. Leah continued. You remember when we were in grad school? And we protested that surveillance policy? You built that encryption demo overnight. The press called it a stunt, but it worked. You changed the narrative. That was different, Maya said. Back then, it was about code, not people. Leah paused. No, it's always been about people. Code just happens to be the language you speak best. Maya smiled faintly. You always know how to sound like a prophet when I'm falling apart. That's because prophets get tired too, Leah said softly. But they keep speaking. For a moment, neither said anything. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of shared understanding. Finally, Maya whispered, I keep asking myself, what's the point I built a company that protects millions of users? I mentor young black engineers. I donate to scholarships. I've done everything right. And still, at a gate, at a meeting, at a table, I'm treated like a stranger. Leah's response was slow, deliberate. Then stop waiting for permission to belong. Build something so undeniable they have to rewrite the rules. Maya's eyes lingered on her laptop screen, where lines of green code blinked gently. You make it sound easy. It's not, Leah said. But neither was building Centranet. You just forgot who you were for a minute. I haven't forgotten, Maya said. I'm just tired of carrying the whole message. You don't have to carry it alone, Leah replied. You just have to spark it again. After they hung up, Maya stayed seated, letting the quiet settle around her. The hum of the hotel's air conditioner mixed with the distant sound of traffic. She stared at the blinking cursor on her screen. Each pulse felt like a heartbeat. She opened a secure document, a prototype she'd been developing secretly for months. A network testing protocol she called Echo. It was designed to simulate system vulnerabilities without causing damage, to reveal blind spots hidden within corporate infrastructures. She had originally built it for ethical training programs, but now, as she studied the lines of code, she saw it differently. It wasn't just a test, it was a mirror. The same thought kept looping in her mind. What if the only way to make people understand injustice was to make them feel it, even for a moment, not to hurt them, but to expose the complacency built into their systems? Her cursor hovered over a single command. A small tremor passed through her fingers. She didn't execute anything, not yet, but the possibility lit something inside her, a quiet spark she hadn't felt in years. A notification appeared on her phone news headlines about Aerovista Airlines. A social media post was circulating from a woman who had been denied her seat after a ticketing error. Different face, same story. Maya exhaled sharply. It was never isolated. It was never random. She clicked open her company's encrypted chat app. A message popped up from Evan Porter, her CTO. Evan, you awake? Maya, barely. What's wrong, Evan? Not wrong. Just thinking about what happened. The way they treated you at the gate is not right. We could make them notice. You know we could. Maya, how Evan Echo. We could deploy it. Temporarily. Just enough to show what a breach of ethics feels like. It's symbolic, not destructive. Maya, that's not what it was built for. Evan, maybe it's exactly what it was built for. Maya sat back. The hum of her computer sounded louder now, like it was listening. Her reflection in the black monitor looked different, sharper, more deliberate. She typed, "Not yet, but soon." Then she closed the laptop, shutting the thought inside like a secret. She lay on the bed, but couldn't sleep. The ceiling light hummed faintly above her. Her mind kept drifting to the passengers who had laughed behind her at the gate, to the executives who had dismissed her brilliance, to the little black girls watching news stories about women like her and learning what the world thought they couldn't be. In the darkness, she whispered, "No more waiting." Her phone buzzed again, a message from Leah. "Just remember, you don't have to shout to make noise. You just have to choose the right frequency." Maya smiled, eyes closed. "Right frequency," she repeated softly. Outside, the city slept under a blanket of low clouds, but inside her, something had begun to wake. Not anger, but resolve, the kind that changes direction quietly and permanently. At dawn, she rose before the alarm. The world outside was silver and still. She brewed coffee, black and strong, and opened her laptop again. The lines of code from the night before waited patiently on the screen. She ran a diagnostic no action yet, just simulation. Her screen displayed echo test environment initiated, Maya whispered. "Let's see what silence can do." The simulation ran for exactly 3 minutes before she shut it down. No harm done, but her heart pounded. She had seen the result's temporary network disconnection across the test grid. Controlled, reversible, powerful. As she stared at the report, a thought formed clearly in her mind. It wasn't vengeance. It was clarity. Maybe change didn't come from louder voices or angrier words. Maybe it came from systems that finally felt what they had ignored. The world would soon call it justice. She just called it balance. The morning she left Seattle, the rain was light but unending, tapping against the airport windows like restless fingers. "Doctor?" Maya Ellison stood at the check-in kiosk, suitcase by her side, her reflection faint in the glass. She had booked the return flight under her company account again. Same airline, same class Aerovista. She had thought about switching carriers, but something inside her refused to. Not out of forgiveness, out of purpose. This time, she wasn't flying as the woman they'd humiliated. She was flying as the woman who had stopped waiting to be seen. She had her phone charged, camera ready, and a quiet certainty building beneath her calm expression. "Good morning, ma'am," the agent greeted without looking up. Her name tag read Douglas Finn, mid-30s, polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Destination Dallas," Maya replied. He nodded and tapped at the screen. "May I see your ID?" She handed it to him. Steady hands. Steady breath. He scanned it, frowned slightly, then typed again. The familiar pause came, the same one she'd lived before, where politeness curdled into scrutiny. He said softly. "Your ticket's flagged for verification. Just a moment." Maya's jaw tightened. "Flagged for what system check?" he replied vaguely. "Sometimes happens with corporate purchases. Nothing to worry about." The déjà vu was sharp, almost cinematic. Behind him, she could see 2 other gate agents whispering. One pointed discreetly in her direction. Maya lifted her phone from her purse, pressed record, and set it down on the counter. Douglas looked up, startled. "What are you doing?" "Documenting," she said evenly. "You said the same thing your colleague told me 3 days ago before downgrading me for a paid first-class ticket. So I'd like to record the process." He blinked. Defensive. "Ma'am, that's not necessary. It's legal." She interrupted. "And necessary. Continue." Her voice wasn't loud, but its steadiness drew attention. People nearby began to glance over, sensing tension. He hesitated, then forced a smile. "No problem. It's probably a quick fix." He turned to whisper to another agent, a younger woman with auburn hair. The woman looked at the screen, frowned, and whispered something back. Maya zoomed her camera slightly toward the monitor. She could see her name, Dr. Maya Ellison, and beside it, a flashing yellow note, Verify ID. Discrepancy. Douglas returned, his tone falsely gentle. Looks like there's an issue matching your payment verification. We'll have to reassign you temporarily to standard seating while we confirm. Standard seating, Maya repeated. You mean economy. It's just a precaution. Ma'am, once we confirm, you'll be compensated. She smiled faintly. How efficient. You make discrimination sound like customer service. The words hit harder than she intended. Douglas stiffened. Excuse me. You heard me, Maya said softly. Go ahead. Print the new boarding pass. Let's make sure this time. The whole world sees it. Phones were out now, 2 passengers recording discreetly. Maya didn't flinch. She simply picked up her ticket when it printed and looked straight into her own camera lens. Same airline, same woman, same verification issue. Her tone was calm, precise. Different day, same story. The video ended there, but the damage was done. Within an hour, as she sat by the gate waiting to board, her post had already begun spreading. She hadn't added hashtags, hadn't tagged anyone, but strangers had. First class while black. By the time boarding began, her post had tens of thousands of views. Someone had clipped her sentence. You make discrimination sound like customer service, and it was looping across platforms. As she stepped onto the plane, the flight attendants looked tense, whispering among themselves. One of them, a young woman with dark curls, gave Maya a nervous smile. Welcome aboard. Dr. Ellison? Maya paused. You know who I am. The attendant nodded. Everyone does now. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Maya moved to her seat economy again and placed her bag beneath the seat in front of her. A man nearby leaned forward, whispering, You're that lady from the video. Right. She met his gaze. Yes. He nodded slowly. Good. About time someone said it out loud. The plane filled quickly, tension thick as fog. As the aircraft taxied, Maya scrolled through her phone, watching notifications flood her screen, messages of solidarity, outrage, some from strangers, some from colleagues, one from Evan Porter. It's happening. Stay calm. We'll handle the tech if it gets ugly. She typed back. No handling, just truth. The seatbelt light blinked on. The engines roared. The plane lifted into the clouds, climbing through turbulence. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, letting the noise fade into rhythm. At cruising altitude, the same curly-haired attendant approached her row. Dr. Ellison, may I offer you something to drink? Maya looked up, surprised. Water, please. The attendant nodded, then hesitated. For what it's worth, she said quietly. I'm sorry for how they treated you before. I've seen things like that happen more than once. It's not right. Your honesty means more than an apology, Maya replied. The woman smiled faintly, relief softening her face. If you need anything, my name's Carla. Thank you, Carla. As she walked away, Maya looked out the window. The clouds below looked endless, white fields without borders. She thought about Leah's words the night before. You don't have to shout to make noise. You just have to choose the right frequency. Maybe this was it. Maybe visibility itself was the frequency. Halfway through the flight, her phone buzzed again. A message from Leah. It's everywhere. CNN just picked it up. The airlines issued a statement already calling it a misunderstanding. Maya exhaled slowly. Of course they did. Leah. You okay, Maya? I'm calm, but I won't let them rewrite the story this time. Leah. Then tell it first. The plane began its descent into Dallas. The light shifted, soft gold pouring through the windows. Maya stared at her reflection, at the woman who had once believed that patience alone could heal injustice. She realized now it couldn't. When the plane landed, passengers clapped, the usual ritual of relief. But Maya didn't move. She waited till the cabin was nearly empty before standing. Carla, the attendant, appeared by her row. "You've got people waiting outside," she said quietly. "What kind of people?" "The kind with cameras." Maya smiled. "Good." As she stepped off the plane, flashes erupted. Reporters shouted questions. "Dr. Ellison, did Aerovista discriminate against you? Will you be pressing charges? Are you planning legal action?" She held up a hand for silence. The crowd stilled. "I'm not here for revenge," she said clearly. "I'm here for truth. What happened to me happens to people every day who don't have the platform or the title to be heard. I'm just holding up the mirror. The reflection is theirs to face." Her voice carried across the terminal, firm but calm. Cameras captured every word. Behind the crowd, Douglas stood near the gate, pale and still. That night, the clip aired on every major network. Within hours, Aerovista's stock began to slide. Executives scrambled to release statements, to apologize, to minimize. But it was too late. The world had seen it. The dignity of her restraint had become a weapon sharper than rage. As Maya watched the coverage from her apartment, she felt something unexpected, not triumph, but stillness. A storm had begun. But it wasn't hers alone anymore. Her phone buzzed again. Evan this time. "We've been contacted by reporters. They want a statement from Centranet, too." She typed back, "Tell them we believe in transparency. Always." Then she closed her eyes, exhausted but at peace. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring backlash and scrutiny and questions she hadn't prepared for. But tonight, she allowed herself a quiet victory, the kind that comes not from winning, but from refusing to disappear. The world had finally listened. Now it would have to respond. By sunrise, her name was everywhere. Dr. Maya Ellison flashed across TV tickers and phone screens. The words, "Zoe saw her first class while black," trended at the top of social media. Talk shows replayed the moment she stood at the gate. Voice even, eyes steady, saying, "You make discrimination sound like customer service." Millions had watched it. Millions more were now sharing their own stories beneath the hashtag. In her Dallas apartment, sunlight poured through half-closed blinds. Maya sat at her kitchen table, hair pulled back, untouched coffee cooling beside her laptop. Notifications blinked faster than she could read. Reporters, activists, strangers all reaching out. The world was suddenly awake, but Maya felt strangely still. She clicked open one video, an older black woman filming herself at another airport. "They told me my seat was taken. I thought it was just me," the woman said. "Now I know it's not." Another clip showed a young Latina mother in tears. "I showed my ticket 3 times, and they still made me prove it was mine. Thank you, Dr. Ellison, for not staying quiet." Maya covered her mouth, overwhelmed. It wasn't just her story anymore. It was everyone's. The quiet pain she had carried alone had become a collective voice, echoing louder than she could ever have imagined. Her phone rang. "Leah." "I see the revolution started without me," Leah said as soon as Maya answered. Maya laughed softly. "You always exaggerate." "No, I don't." "You lit a match, and the whole forest caught fire. The hashtag's already trending in 20 countries. People are using it to talk about workplace bias, healthcare discrimination, even education. You started something big. Maya rubbed her forehead. I didn't start it. I just refused to stay quiet. Exactly, Leah replied. Silence was the glue holding the system together. You broke it. Before Maya could respond, another notification popped up. Aerovista Airlines press conference. 10 a.m. CST. She sighed. They're going public. Leah's voice sharpened. You know what they'll do? Deny, deflect, and downplay. They'll call it a misunderstanding. Maybe suspend a few employees. Issue a polished apology. I know. So what are you going to do? Maya stared at her reflection in the black screen of her laptop. I'm going to tell the truth again. Just louder. At 10 a.m. She turned on the live broadcast. The Aerovista CEO, Charles Whitmore, stood at a podium, flanked by corporate banners. His voice was smooth, carefully measured. We deeply regret the incident involving Dr. Ellison. While there was no malicious intent, we recognize that perception matters. Aerovista does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. Maya nearly laughed. Perception matters, as though bias were a trick of the light. Reporters shouted questions. One asked, Has Aerovista reached out to Dr. Ellison personally? Whitmore hesitated. Our communications team has made several attempts to contact her, but she has chosen not to engage directly. Maya frowned. That was a lie. She had received no call, no email. She opened her laptop, typed a short post for the record. Aerovista has not contacted me. If they wish to speak, they can do so publicly, the same way they denied me. Within minutes, her statement overtook the press conference itself. News anchors interrupted coverage to display her post. Commentators began dissecting every word, calling her the face of modern corporate accountability. Her inbox filled with messages supporters, reporters, politicians, tech executives. Some praised her courage. Some wanted her to partner on diversity initiatives. Some just wanted proximity to her name. Amid the flood of emails, one stood out. From Janice, Holterovista. Com. The subject line read, You need to see this. Maya hesitated, scanning the message. It was short, almost trembling in tone. I work in Aerovista's IT department. I've seen internal communications that prove your flight was deliberately flagged. It's not a system error, it's policy. They mark certain profile mismatches for review, and they know exactly what that means. I can get you the files, but I need protection. Maya read it twice. Her hands were suddenly cold. This wasn't just bias. It was systemic design. She forwarded the message to Evan with a single note. Verify discreetly. Seconds later, he replied. On it. She sat back, heartbeat loud in her ears. If this was real, it would expose an entire infrastructure built on coded discrimination. She wasn't just facing prejudice anymore. She was staring into the architecture of it. The phone rang again. Leah, breathless. I just saw your post. Maya, this is bigger than a movement. You realize what happens when you prove it was policy, not accident. Maya nodded slowly. Yes, it becomes accountability. That's not just going to shake Aerovista. That's going to shake every corporate compliance board in the country. I know. Her voice was calm but heavy. That's why we can't stop halfway. Hours passed. News outlets called it the Ellison effect. Market analysts predicted Aerovista's stock could drop 10% by week's end. Employees began leaking stories anonymously, emails, memos, conversations about customer verification tiers. Late afternoon, Evan called. It's real. He said, Janice sent us the raw files. There's a tagging algorithm in their customer management system. It flags accounts based on purchase pattern, name frequency, And get this demographic data tied to public census markers. It's built bias by design. Maya closed her eyes, listening as he explained. Every word felt heavier than the last. "Send me everything," she said finally. He hesitated. "Maya, if you go public with this, they'll come after you. Legally. Personally. Then let them," she said. "I didn't start this for safety." After they hung up, she called Leah again. Her friend answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're not about to blow up a billion-dollar company from your kitchen." "Not from my kitchen," Maya said quietly. "From the truth." Leah sighed, torn between admiration and fear. "You really think they'll change? I don't know," Maya admitted. "But they'll never pretend again that they didn't know." That evening, she recorded a short video, sitting at her kitchen table. No makeup, no stage lights. Her voice was calm, deliberate. AeroVista's system didn't fail. It worked exactly as it was designed to. It categorized people based on assumptions. That's not an error. That's engineering. And if you can build bias, you can also build justice. She paused before ending the recording. "I'm not asking for apologies. I'm asking for architecture to change." She uploaded the video to her page. In less than an hour, it had 2 million views. The next morning, 5 million. Major networks aired it in full. Commentators debated whether her actions were revolutionary or reckless. But the people, the ones who had been invisible, kept sharing, kept adding their stories. Teachers, veterans, nurses, students. The hashtag had become more than protest. It was a movement. By nightfall, AeroVista's board announced an internal review. The CEO, Charles Whitmore, appeared on television again, this time visibly strained. "We take these allegations seriously," he said. "We will conduct an independent investigation." Maya turned off the TV. She wasn't interested in their performance. Change never began in press rooms. It began in discomfort. As the city lights flickered outside, her phone vibrated once more. A new message from Janice. "There's more. Meet me tomorrow. It goes deeper than you think." Maya stared at the screen, her heart steady, somewhere deep inside. The next step was already forming. The storm she had unleashed was no longer hers to control, but it was hers to guide. The system was shifting, and for the first time, the silence wasn't hers to carry alone. The meeting place was nothing glamorous, an old coffee shop tucked behind a bookstore in downtown Dallas. The kind of spot where conversations disappeared into the hum of espresso machines. Dr. Maya Ellison arrived 10 minutes early, wearing a simple gray blazer and jeans. She ordered black coffee, took the corner booth, and waited. She wasn't nervous, not exactly, but she felt the familiar pulse of anticipation that came before every major decision in her life. When Janice Holt entered, Maya recognized her instantly from the tone of her emails, measured, cautious, sharp. Janice was in her late 40s, tired eyes behind square glasses, a worn tote bag slung over one shoulder. She approached the table quietly. "You came," Maya said softly. Janice gave a nervous nod. "I almost didn't, but I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see it anymore." "Sit," Maya gestured. "You're safe here." Janice sat, glancing around before leaning in. "I've been with AeroVista for 16 years. I joined IT thinking I'd help build systems that make travel smoother, fairer. But what we built turned into a filter." Maya's eyes narrowed. "A filter." Janice opened her laptop. Screen dimmed low, and turned it toward Maya. Rows of data appeared, dense with color-coded entries. These are the internal flags. They're supposed to catch fraudulent purchases and security risks. But over the last 5 years, someone started tweaking the algorithm, adding profiling markers, name origins, zip codes, travel frequency. The software doesn't say race, but it might as well. Maya scrolled through the entries. Her name appeared among them. The code beside it read, Tier 2 Verify. Unmatched demographic profile. Unmatched. Maya repeated. Janice nodded grimly. It means you don't fit the profile of a typical first-class passenger. According to their data model, you bought through a corporate account with a name that doesn't match their expected category. That alone triggered the downgrade. Maya stared at the lines of code, her chest tightening. So it wasn't human error. It was built to foil certain people. Janice's voice dropped. Exactly. And they know. I've seen the internal memos. They discuss the optics, how to reduce friction without making headlines. They even held training sessions to teach gate agents how to smoothly resolve escalations involving high-profile minority customers. That's what they called it, resolution training. The words burned. Maya took a long breath, forcing calm. Why tell me now? Janice hesitated, fingers twisting around her coffee cup. Because your video gave people courage. I watched it with my daughter, she's 12. She asked me if I was part of the problem. I couldn't sleep after that. For a moment, Maya said nothing. The hum of the cafe felt louder, the clinking of cups almost rhythmic. You're doing the right thing, she finally said. But you understand what this means, don't you? Once this goes public, they'll come for you. I know, Janice said. That's why I need your help. Maya nodded slowly. You'll have it. They exchanged drives. The data transfer took seconds but felt like an eternity. Each file was proof, a digital confession. When Maya returned to her apartment, the city was wrapped in night. She set her bag down, turned on her desk lamp, and connected the drive to her secure system. Thousands of documents flashed by emails, meeting notes, performance evaluations of gate agents praised for their discretion. She found one dated 3 months earlier. Subject Passenger Verification Protocol. It read, Continue implementing demographic screening quietly. Avoid terms that could imply bias. Use pattern-based verification and documentation, Maya whispered to herself. They built it into the language. Her phone buzzed. It was Evan. Did you get it? He asked. Yes, and it's worse than I thought. Do you want me to start the trace? Not yet. We'll analyze first. Confirm everything. I want their own files to tell the story. Evan hesitated. You know, once we publish this, we can't undo it. They'll call it cyber theft. I'm not stealing, she said firmly. I'm returning the truth they buried. There was silence on the other end. Then Evan said quietly, You sound ready? I am. After hanging up, she sat back, staring at the glowing lines of data. She wasn't angry anymore. The anger had burned itself into something quieter, sharper purpose. The next morning, she met Leah at her university office. Papers covered the desk, civil rights case studies stacked in neat piles. Leah listened as Maya explained what she'd found, her expression shifting from disbelief to fury. They engineered discrimination into an algorithm, Leah said. It's not bias anymore. It's infrastructure. Maya nodded. And the worst part, they convinced themselves it's neutral. Code doesn't lie, right? So they built bias into the code, then hid behind the illusion of objectivity. Leah leaned back. This is historic. Maya, if you release this data properly, it could redefine how discrimination is understood in the digital age. Maya met her eyes. Then that's what we'll do. They spent hours outlining strategy. Leah drafted legal disclaimers. Evan created a secure upload path, and Maya wrote a statement not as a victim, but as an architect dismantling her own industry's blind spot. That night, Maya sat in her home office recording the video. She wore a simple black sweater, her tone quiet but steady. "Technology has no conscience," she began. "It reflects the values of those who build it. And for too long, our systems have been trained to question certain people before they ever make a sound." She paused, the camera capturing the flicker of emotion in her eyes. "I am not here to destroy. I'm here to rebuild." The files you're about to see come from inside AeroVista's infrastructure. They reveal an algorithm that uses demographic data as a proxy for trustworthiness. That's not innovation. That's prejudice with better marketing. She uploaded the video at 7:12 p.m. By midnight, it had crossed 5 million views. Journalists requested interviews. Legislators called for hearings. And AeroVista's board went into emergency session. Evan texted her. They shut down their servers. Total lockdown. Maya replied, "Doesn't matter. The data's mirrored. The truth is out." Leah called just before dawn. "They're panicking." "Maya, the Department of Transportation's already announced an investigation." "You did it." Maya stared at the rising sun filtering through her blinds. "No," she said softly. "We did it. Every person who refused to stay silent." She walked to the window, watching the light spread across the skyline. It was a new day, literally and metaphorically, but she knew this wasn't the end. Justice didn't move that fast. It was just beginning to wake. Her inbox pinged. A message from Janice again. "They know I talked. HR called me in. I might lose my job today, but it's okay. My daughter said she's proud of me. That's enough." Maya felt her throat tighten. She replied simply, "You didn't lose your job. You gained your integrity. Whatever happens, you're not alone." As the morning unfolded, major news outlets began releasing excerpts from the documents, confirming everything. One anchor's voice trembled slightly as she read, "According to internal memos." AeroVista flagged passengers for review if they did not align with target demographics for first-class experience. Social media exploded. Civil rights leaders praised Maya's courage. Airline stocks plummeted. Congressional hearings were announced. Yet amid the chaos, Maya remained composed. She had always believed in quiet power, the kind that didn't need shouting to be heard. That evening, she joined Leah and Evan on a video call. "You know this will go beyond airlines," Leah said. "Banks, hospitals, hiring platforms, they'll all be next." Maya smiled faintly. "Good. Maybe for once, the system will look at itself honestly." As they ended the call, Maya opened her window. The air smelled of rain again. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled a low, rolling sound like change arriving. She whispered to herself, "Let them feel what silence never taught." And for the first time in a long while, she felt not tired, but free. For 2 days, the country talked about nothing else. News anchors, politicians, tech analysts, everyone had something to say about Dr. Maya Ellison. Her face appeared on every screen. Her video dissected, debated, replayed. Protesters began gathering outside AeroVista headquarters, holding signs that read, "Bias is not a glitch, and we see you. Maya." Others simply held up their phones playing the clip where she had said, calm as ice, "You can build bias. You can also build justice." Inside her apartment, Maya watched in silence. The noise outside her window was constant helicopters, reporters, the hum of a world suddenly awake. Evan had set up temporary cybersecurity walls around her home network. Leah had assigned 2 legal interns to help handle interview requests. Still, the volume of it all felt overwhelming. She hadn't asked for fame. She had asked for truth. But fame, she was learning, was the side effect of courage in a world allergic to accountability. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. She checked the peephole. Janice stood there, clutching a file folder. Maya opened the door immediately. "You shouldn't be here," she said, ushering her in. "They fired me," Janice said quietly, setting the folder on the kitchen counter. "Security escorted me out this morning." "I'm sorry," Maya said. "You didn't deserve that." Janice gave a small, tired smile. "I knew it would happen, but I brought this something you need to see before it disappears from their servers entirely." She opened the folder, revealing printed emails with company letterheads. One, dated 6 months prior, was titled Reputation Containment Strategy. It outlined how AeroVista executives had predicted potential reputational risk due to public perception of inequitable treatment. It even listed counter-narratives and media handling templates to protect the brand. "They planned for this," Maya murmured, scanning the text. "They knew it could blow up." Janice nodded. "They didn't expect someone like you to blow it up this fast." Maya's jaw clenched. They underestimated silence breaking. Her phone buzzed again this time. An unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Dr. Ellison," a man's voice said, steady but official. "This is Agent Daniel Brooks from the Department of Transportation Civil Aviation Compliance Division. We'd like to speak with you in person regarding your recent disclosures." Leah's words echoed in her head. This will go beyond airlines. When Maya asked, "Now," he said, "We're downstairs." Within minutes, 2 plain sedans pulled up outside her building. Maya stepped into the morning light, the world watching her from sidewalks and cameras. Inside the lobby, 3 agents waited. The lead one, Agent Brooks, tall, salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes, extended a hand. "Dr. Ellison, thank you for agreeing to meet. We're not here to interrogate you. We're here to understand the evidence you've released." They took her to a quiet office near the airport district neutral territory. The walls were bare, the table small. She placed her tablet on it, opening the mirrored data Janice had provided. "Everything here came from AeroVista's internal system," she explained. "Files, memos, even code snippets. None of it was altered." Agent Brooks studied her carefully. "You're aware that possession of proprietary data can constitute a federal offense?" Maya met his gaze. "Yes, but covering systemic discrimination under proprietary rights is also an offense against every passenger who trusted them." One corner of his mouth lifted. "You've got courage. Dr. Ellison, courage is easy when the truth's this loud," she replied. They spent 3 hours reviewing documents. Each file deepened the pattern. Passenger profiling algorithms, meeting notes referencing acceptable demographic ratios. It wasn't just AeroVista, it was connected through shared contractors, data vendors, and analytics firms supplying predictive models to other airlines. The rot was networked. Agent Brooks leaned back. "This isn't one company. This is an industry blueprint." Maya nodded. "That's why we can't stop here." He studied her for a moment. "You realize the scale of what you've done. You've opened a door that won't close again." "I didn't open it," Maya said quietly. "I just refused to walk past it." That night, when she returned home, Leah was waiting on her doorstep. "You're officially a federal case study now," she said, half amused, half worried. "They'll investigate," Maya replied, "and they'll try to control the narrative." Then stay one step ahead, Leah urged. Use your own platform before they bury your voice in bureaucracy. Maya hesitated, exhaustion showing in her posture. It's not about me anymore. It's about what comes after me. Leah smiled. Then say that. People will listen. So she did. That evening, Maya went live on her platform again. No lights, no polish, just her voice and her conviction. This isn't a story about one woman and one airline. It's about how power hides behind systems. Algorithms are not neutral. They're mirrors. And right now, that mirror shows who we've chosen to value and who we've chosen to question. Her words spread like wind through dry leaves. Viewers poured in, not just from the U.S., but from across the world. Airline staff in France, data engineers in Singapore, activists in Brazil, all resonating with her message. The movement had gone global. Within hours, the Department of Transportation released an official statement acknowledging credible evidence of algorithmic discrimination. The President's press secretary announced that a task force would be created to examine equity in automated systems. Leah called minutes later. You realize what this means? Right. You've just changed federal policy discourse. Maya exhaled softly. It's not over yet. Systems protect themselves before they fall. The following morning, an AeroVista press conference aired live. CEO Charles Whitmore looked worn, his confident smile gone. Effective immediately. He said, AeroVista Airlines will suspend all automated customer verification systems pending audit. Additionally, I am stepping down from my role as Chief Executive Officer. Reporters erupted. Cameras flashed. Somewhere across the city, Janice watched the announcement from her living room, tears streaming down her face. Maya saw it too, sitting in silence. For a brief moment, she allowed herself a slow, steady breath. Not triumph, not vengeance, just relief, the kind that came when truth no longer needed defending. Her phone vibrated again, this time with a text from Evan. Maya, check your inbox. You've been invited to speak before the Senate Tech Ethics Committee. She opened the message. It was real official letterhead. Signature. Date confirmed for the following week. She smiled faintly, almost to herself. So now the system wants a conversation. Leah, who had been beside her, grinned. And you'll give them one they'll never forget. That evening, Maya walked through her apartment, quiet now except for the hum of her devices. The city outside glowed in streaks of orange and blue. She thought of her parents, her father's words when she was young one day. Baby, they'll have to listen to your silence. He had been right. She sat by the window, sipping tea, the fatigue finally catching up. Yet beneath it all was peace. The kind born not of victory, but of alignment, her work, her values, her purpose, finally converging. On her laptop, she opened a blank document and began typing her next speech. Her first line read, Technology should protect people, not profile them. She paused, then smiled. That's a good start. She whispered, Outside. The night was alive with distant sirens, flashes of cameras, and the low murmur of change. The world was recalibrating, and she, quiet, determined, steady, was at its center. And for the first time in years, Maya felt the future bending, not away from her, but toward her. The Yom Capitol looked both majestic and heavy that morning, bathed in a pale winter light that made its marble steps gleam like glass. Reporters clustered outside the Senate building, microphones raised, voices overlapping. Dr. Ellison, over here. Do you believe AeroVista's discrimination was intentional? What do you expect from the hearing today? Are you planning to run for office? Dr. Maya Ellison moved calmly through the noise, her expression unreadable. She wore a navy blue suit, sharp, minimal, dignified. Leah walked beside her, clutching a binder of notes, while Evan followed a few steps behind carrying a secure case with the mirrored data drives. They looked less like a protest team and more like an advance unit of quiet truth. Inside, the corridors buzzed with tension. Senators, aides, and journalists filled every seat. The hearing was being broadcast live, not just across the country, but globally. It wasn't merely about AeroVista anymore. It was about the ethics of technology itself. When the committee chair, Senator Caldwell, called her name, Maya stepped to the witness table. The room fell silent. Cameras clicked once, then stopped. She raised her right hand, swore her oath, and sat down. Her heartbeat was steady, but her palms felt cool against the polished wood. "Dr. Ellison," Senator Caldwell began, "thank you for your presence today. You've ignited a national conversation about bias in automated systems. Please begin with your statement." Maya opened her folder and spoke. Her voice was even, low, but commanding. "Thank you. Senator, I did not come here as a victim, but as a builder. I helped design the kind of systems that now decide who gets a loan, who gets insurance, who gets a seat. And I'm here because those systems have begun to inherit the same blind spots as the people who create them." The senators leaned forward. Her tone carried weight without volume. "What happened on my flight wasn't an error. It was an equation. It was prejudice dressed in code. AeroVista's algorithm was programmed to assign trust using demographic proxies. It looked at where I lived, how I purchased my ticket, even the name attached to my account. I didn't fail the system. The system failed the truth." A murmur rippled through the room. Senator Caldwell lifted a hand. "Dr. Ellison, do you have evidence supporting that claim?" "I do," Maya said, nodding to Evan, who slid the encrypted drive across the table. "Within these files are internal communications, code fragments, and memos proving that AeroVista knowingly deployed profiling metrics under the label of fraud prevention. I'm submitting them to the committee for review." She paused, then continued, "But this hearing isn't about one airline. It's about how we measure worth. Every biased algorithm begins as a human choice, what data we value, what risk we fear, and whose experience we consider an exception." Senator Luis Rivera, a younger member of the committee, leaned in. "You're suggesting this bias extends beyond the airline industry." "I'm not suggesting," Maya said. "I'm confirming. These systems use shared data vendors and analytic models across multiple sectors: banking, healthcare, even hiring platforms. The same code logic repeats itself different applications. Same outcome distrust disguised as data." Cameras zoomed closer. The gravity of her words filled the air. She could feel Leah's eyes on her from the second row, steady and proud. Senator Caldwell cleared his throat. "Dr. Ellison, some critics have called your data acquisition illegal. They say you overstepped your role as a private citizen." Maya met his gaze. If exposing hidden discrimination is illegal, then the law has lost its moral compass. "The question isn't whether I overstepped, it's whether they ever stepped up." The audience gasped softly. Even the senator's expression flickered with respect before he continued. "Dr. Ellison," he said, "if you could change the system, where would you start?" She exhaled slowly. "With transparency. Every algorithm that impacts human lives should be audited publicly, independently, without exception. Technology shouldn't be a mirror that reflects power. It should be a window that lets truth in. And most of all, we must redefine innovation not as speed or scale, but as equity." The room broke into applause, restrained at first, then rising before Caldwell's gavel restored order. For nearly 3 hours, Maya answered questions technical, ethical, political. Some senators challenged her, trying to corner her with legal phrasing. Others simply listened, visibly moved. Through it all, her composure never faltered. When the hearing concluded, Senator Rivera stood. "Dr. Ellison," she said publicly, "you've done more than reveal a flaw. You've reminded us that systems are reflections of our moral choices. Thank you." As the session adjourned, Maya gathered her papers, shook hands, and quietly exited through a side door with Leah and Evan. Outside, reporters swarmed, but she didn't speak. Instead, she walked down the steps, sunlight spilling over her shoulders like an unplanned spotlight. Leah touched her arm gently. "You realize what just happened?" "Right." Maya smiled faintly. "A few people listened. A few people," Leah laughed. "Half the country just did." Evan joined them, pulling up his phone. "You should see this," he said. Algorithmic justice is trending." And the president just issued a statement supporting new AI ethics legislation. They're calling it the Ellison Reform Act. Maya blinked, stunned. "They're naming it after me." Leah grinned. "Looks like it." Maya didn't reply right away. She looked out at the Capitol dome, its white curve framed by a cloudless sky. The wind carried the faint sound of cheering from the crowd beyond the gates. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel it gratitude, not pride. Change wasn't abstract anymore. It had a pulse. Later that evening, she and Leah returned to her apartment. The sun had dipped low, the air golden with dusk. The television played softly in the background, a news anchor summarizing the day's hearing, clips of Maya's testimony looping behind her voice. Dr. Maya Ellison, the tech CEO who exposed bias in airline systems, may have set the precedent for a new federal standard in algorithmic accountability. Maya turned the volume down. "It feels surreal," she said quietly. Leah smiled. "Revolutions usually do, especially the quiet ones." Her phone buzzed another message from Janice. "They called me today. The new CEO wants to meet. They're launching an internal diversity and transparency council. They're rehiring me to lead it." Maya exhaled, emotion catching in her throat. "You deserve it," she replied. Outside, the city lights flickered on one by one. For the first time in weeks, the world felt still. Leah poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to her. "You know, Maya," she said softly, "some people change systems from within. You burned one down and built the blueprint for the next." Maya laughed quietly. "I didn't burn it. I just held up a mirror. The reflection did the rest." They clinked glasses. The sound was small but full of meaning. Later that night, when the apartment was quiet again, Maya stepped onto her balcony. The sky stretched wide and endless. Below her, the city pulsed with energy, traffic lights blinking, sirens distant, life moving forward. She thought about everything it had taken to reach this moment, the humiliation, the doubt, the courage it took to remain calm when silence screamed. And she thought of her father's old saying again, "They'll have to listen to your silence." She smiled. "Looks like they finally did." Her phone vibrated once more. A new notification from the White House Communications Office. "The President requests your presence next month to discuss national ethics initiatives. Please confirm your availability." Maya set the phone down on the balcony ledge, watching the horizon glow. She didn't feel overwhelmed or nervous, just ready. Ready for whatever came next. Because the world wasn't finished changing yet, and neither was she. The morning after the hearing, the world woke to a new headline. Dr. Maya Ellison to meet President on AI ethics and civil rights. It ran across every network, every online publication, every phone screen. To most people, it was a story of triumph, a symbol of change finally catching up to truth. But to Maya, it felt more like a quiet checkpoint on a road that stretched far beyond applause. She stood at her apartment window, coffee untouched, watching the city move. Down below, life looked ordinary: people rushing to work, vendors setting up stalls, joggers crossing streets. Yet she knew something irreversible had shifted. The conversation had begun, and it wasn't just about her anymore. Her phone buzzed with a secure call from a restricted number. She answered. "Dr. Ellison," said a woman's voice, smooth and composed. "This is Angela Ford, Senior Policy Advisor to the President. I'm calling to confirm your availability for a private meeting next Tuesday at the West Wing. The President would like to discuss the implementation framework for algorithmic justice and digital ethics reform." Maya blinked. "That soon?" "Yes, ma'am." "The administration believes momentum is critical. Your voice will be instrumental in shaping the ethics innovation bill now under review." "I'll be there," Maya said quietly. After hanging up, she stood still for a long time. The magnitude of it hit her slowly. She had spent years breaking into boardrooms where her expertise was doubted, where her presence felt like a test. Now, the most powerful office in the country wanted her counsel. Leah arrived later that morning with a smile that could light a room. "So, Madam Advisor, how does it feel to have the White House on speed dial?" Maya laughed softly. "Unreal. Part of me keeps waiting for the world to blink and go back to how it was." "It won't," Leah said, settling onto the couch. "You opened a door too big to close." Evan joined the call from his office screen. The media is still buzzing, and Aero Vista just announced a full board restructuring. They're offering Janice the new Director of Compliance role. "That's poetic justice," Leah said, grinning. Maya nodded. She earned it. Every line of code she exposed was a line of courage. Her phone pinged a text from Janice herself. "I start Monday. I still can't believe it." "Thank you for giving me back my voice," Maya replied. "You gave yourself back your voice. I just listened." For a few hours, they worked together, outlining the key issues Maya would raise at the meeting: regulations, transparency, the ethical implications of automated decision-making. She insisted on one point above all: accountability. "We can't legislate morality," she told them, "but we can require visibility. Sunlight is still the best disinfectant." As the day faded into evening, Maya found herself sitting alone again, her laptop glowing in the dim light. She opened a draft labeled Speech, West Wing. The cursor blinked, patient and steady. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she began to type. "I didn't start this journey as a reformer. I started it as a traveler, just trying to get home. What I found instead was a mirror reflecting the quiet biases we've learned to live with. Systems don't discriminate by accident. They do it because people build them that way, and people can unbuild them too." She paused, rereading the words. It wasn't a speech about anger. It was a call to rebuild with empathy. 3 days later, she flew to Washington, D.C. The city hummed with anticipation. News crews lined Pennsylvania Avenue, eager for a glimpse of the woman whose voice had unsettled the powerful. As her car pulled up to the White House gates, she caught her reflection in the tinted glass, composed, but with a trace of disbelief still lingering. Angela Ford met her at the entrance, warm and efficient. "Dr. Ellison, welcome. The President's been briefed extensively on your findings. We've arranged for a closed-door discussion before the public press statement. The hallway gleamed with portraits of past leaders, faces cast in oil and confidence. Maya felt the weight of history, but also a strange calm. She wasn't here to perform. She was here to contribute. Inside the Roosevelt room, the president stood waiting, older, thoughtful, eyes lined with fatigue, but still sharp with purpose. "Dr. Ellison," he said, extending a hand, "it's an honor. You've managed to do what many before. You only theorized about turned technology into a moral conversation. Thank you." "Mr. President," she replied. But it wasn't just me. It was the silence of millions finally finding words. He nodded, gesturing for her to sit. "Tell me what comes next." "For the next hour." Maya outlined her vision: mandatory algorithmic audits, citizen oversight boards, transparency requirements for every company using AI to make social or financial decisions. She spoke plainly, without rhetoric, grounding every suggestion in lived experience. At one point, the president leaned back, visibly impressed. "You know," he said, "most people come in here asking for power. You came in asking for principles. We need more of that." "I'm asking for both," she said gently, "because without principles, power just repeats its mistakes with better technology." He smiled. Point taken. By the end of the meeting, a framework was set. Maya would co-chair a national task force on ethical technology, working directly with lawmakers and industry leaders. The Ethics Innovation Bill would bear her input and her values. When she left the West Wing, the air outside felt different. Reporters shouted her name again. Flashes burst, but this time she didn't rush. She paused, turned toward them, and spoke softly into the microphones. "This isn't about me," she said. "It's about every traveler who's ever been questioned, every customer who's ever been doubted, every citizen who's ever been made to prove they belong. We've started rewriting the code not just in machines, but in ourselves." The clip went viral within hours. That night, back at her hotel, Maya stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker like a living network. Her phone buzzed. "Leah!" "Again." "You did it," Leah said simply. "Not yet," Maya replied, "but I think the system's finally listening." There was a pause. Then Leah said, her voice gentle, "You sound lighter." "I am," Maya said. "For the first time. I'm not fighting for a seat. I'm helping build the table." When she hung up, she opened her laptop once more and began drafting a new document, the Ellison Framework for Ethical Technology. Its first line read, "Justice is not an update. It's the foundation." Outside, a steady rain began to fall. Over digs, washing the streets clean. Inside, Maya smiled to herself, knowing that what began with one flight and one act of quiet resistance had become a movement with no borders. She whispered under her breath, almost a prayer, "Let the next generation never have to buy a first-class ticket to be treated with first-class respect." And for the first time since it all began, she allowed herself to rest. The morning sun fell gently across Washington, a soft golden wash over the quiet city. From the 14th floor window of her hotel suite, Dr. Maya Ellison could see the faint outline of the Potomac River, shimmering under the early light. It was peaceful, deceptively so. Her phone buzzed constantly on the nightstand, vibrating with messages, alerts, and interview requests. But she let it ring. For once, she wanted silence, not the empty kind that followed injustice, but the full kind that came after impact. She sat on the edge of the bed, barefoot, robe loosely tied, holding a cup of black coffee. The quiet hum of the air conditioner was the only sound in the room. It felt strange to breathe without urgency. For the first time in months, there were no fires to put out, no press to face, no meetings to prepare for, only space to exist. Her thoughts drifted back to the West Wing, to the president's steady gaze when he'd said, "You turned technology into a moral compass." She hadn't felt pride then, only an ache, a realization that moral compasses had existed all along, just ignored until people like her forced the world to recalibrate. The doorbell rang. She opened it to find Leah Brooks holding a paper bag and smiling. "I brought survival fuel," Leah said, lifting the bag. "Blueberry muffins and the strongest coffee this side of D.C." Maya laughed softly, motioning her in. "You always know when to show up." "I watched the morning news," Leah said, placing the bag on the table. "They're already calling your meeting the Ellison Accord." "That's a nice way of saying you made the most powerful people in America rewrite their ethics policy." Maya raised an eyebrow. "They'll revise it again in 6 months. Call it innovation, and forget who sparked it." "Maybe," Leah said, unwrapping a muffin. "But you changed the conversation. And once people start asking the right questions, the system can't hide anymore." They sat together, the kind of comfortable silence only old friends could share. Leah broke it first. "You know what I kept thinking last night about your first day at MIT. Remember when you told me your goal wasn't to build the biggest company, but to build something that couldn't be corrupted by greed?" Maya smiled faintly. "I was so naive." "No," Leah said, shaking her head. "You were clear. You just didn't realize that what you were trying to build wasn't a product, it was a principle." Maya looked out the window. "I don't know if people are ready to live by principles anymore." Leah leaned forward. "They are if they see what it costs to ignore them." Their conversation was interrupted by a gentle knock. Maya opened the door to find Evan Porter, tired but energized, his tablet in one hand. "Morning, boss," he said. "Sorry to crash breakfast, but there's something you should see." He set the tablet on the table. On the screen was a live stream of AeroVista's press event. Their new CEO, a black woman in her 50s named Rachel Monroe, stood at a podium flanked by employees. "Starting today," she said, "AeroVista will adopt full transparency audits across every digital system. We're also committing $50 million toward equitable technology programs and scholarships in underrepresented communities. We owe our progress to the bravery of those who refuse to stay silent, especially Dr. Maya Ellison." Maya blinked, stunned. "They said my name." Evan nodded, loudly. The applause lasted a minute. Leah smiled. "See, change doesn't vanish. It ripples." Maya exhaled slowly, emotion tightening in her chest. "Rachel Monroe," she murmured. "I met her once, years ago. She was a project manager back when I consulted for their cybersecurity division. Smart, steady, principled. Looks like the right people finally made it to the table." Evan grinned. "And the rest of us? We're catching up." He handed her another folder. "By the way, the President's task force has already started assembling. You'll have your first strategy session next week." Maya nodded, scanning the contents. "We'll need to balance government oversight with private innovation," she said thoughtfully. "The moment people feel regulated instead of included, they'll resist the message." Leah chuckled. "You realize you're already talking like a policymaker." "I'm still a builder," Maya replied. "Just building something different now." Her phone buzzed again. A new email popped up from Janice Holt, a photo of her standing in front of the AeroVista headquarters with her daughter, both smiling proudly. "We started orientation today. She asked me if systems can learn kindness. I told her yes. but only if we teach them. Thank you for making that lesson possible." Maya stared at the message for a long time before replying, "Teach her that kindness is the strongest form of intelligence." She set the phone down, a faint smile on her lips. The rest of the morning passed in quiet work. Evan drafted briefing notes, Leah coordinated media requests, and Maya refined her framework for the ethics task force. She focused on 3 pillars: transparency, inclusion, and accountability. The same 3 things she'd fought for her entire life, now written into policy. By afternoon, she stepped outside for air. The White House dome shimmered in the distance. Around her, people walked past, some recognizing her, nodding quietly, others too wrapped in their own worlds. A young woman stopped her near the park entrance. "Excuse me," she said nervously. "You're Dr. Ellison, right?" Maya smiled. "I am—" The woman hesitated, then said, "I just wanted to say thank you. I work in tech. I've been told I was too much, more times than I can count. Watching you reminded me that being too much is exactly what changes things." Maya's eyes softened. "Keep being too much. The world adjusts eventually." The woman laughed through tears. "I will." As she walked away, Maya stood still, letting the wind brush her face. The air smelled faintly of rain and jasmine. She closed her eyes for a moment, whispering to herself, "Maybe hope isn't loud. Maybe it's just persistent." That evening, the city glowed under a lavender sky. The White House released a joint statement announcing the formal launch of the National Ethics Task Force co-chaired by Dr. Maya Ellison. The announcement ended with her quote, "Technology doesn't need to choose sides. It just needs to stop choosing silence." Maya sat by the window again that night, watching lights flicker across the river. Leah had gone home. Evan had flown back to Seattle, and the suite was quiet. She thought of her younger self, the girl coding by candlelight in her mother's kitchen, the woman ignored in conference rooms, the passenger told she didn't belong in first class. All of it had led here. Her phone lit up once more, an incoming video call from her mother. "Baby, I saw you on TV," her mother said, eyes glistening. "You look so calm up there, like you'd been waiting your whole life for that seat." Maya smiled softly. "Maybe I was, but it wasn't just my seat. It was ours." Her mother laughed gently. "Well, next time, remind them who raised you when they hand out those medals." "I'll make sure of it," Maya said, voice breaking into laughter. When the call ended, she stood, stretching, letting the night air fill the room. Tomorrow, she would return to Seattle. There would be meetings, drafts, and endless debates, but tonight, she allowed herself stillness. Outside, planes passed overhead, their lights trailing across the dark, like small moving stars. One flight descended slowly, landing lights bright against the horizon. She watched it, remembering everything that had begun with a seat she was told she didn't deserve. Now she didn't just have a seat, she had a voice strong enough to make room for others. She whispered into the quiet, "Let this be the start, not the story." And with that, she turned off the lights, ready for the morning that would follow. Dr. Maya Ellison's journey teaches us that real change begins the moment we decide not to look away, not from injustice, not from discomfort, and not from truth. Her story reminds us that silence is not peace, it's the slow acceptance of inequality. What she did wasn't revenge, it was restoration. For older generations who've witnessed decades of struggle and progress, Maya's courage is a reflection of a timeless truth. Integrity outlasts power. She faced humiliation not with anger, but with grace anchored in purpose. In doing so, She showed that leadership isn't about position, it's about principle. We can all take something from her when life tests you. Don't respond to hate with hate. Respond with clarity, conviction, and the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth. Because no system, no algorithm, no prejudice can silence a soul that refuses to surrender its dignity. Thank you for watching and sharing this journey with us. If Maya's story moved you, if it made you think, feel, or remember a time when you stood for what was right, please give this video a like. Share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Together, we can keep telling stories that matter, stories that heal, challenge, and remind us of the power we hold when we choose compassion over silence. Let's keep the conversation alive.